It's actually Gorta Hork, but we won't. We'll forgive you for that, Stephen. Yeah, my name's Amanda Gallagher. I'm a consultant in energy and sustainability. I've been living in Donegal for about 3 years now. What I'm going to talk about today, I'm a BREEAM assessor, but I'm also evaluating the RenNet programme working with Joanne. So I've had quite an interest in the RenNet programme. I'm kind of going a wee bit off topic. So we've been concentrating very much on energy, and I just want to try and broaden it a little bit with just talking about sustainability in general. So I just want to try and talk about definitions of sustainability. So we keep talking about renewable energy and sustainability, but what does that actually mean? So aspects of definitions often include society, enduring in the long term, living within our limits, understanding and managing the interconnections between economy, society and environment, the equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. One of the most useful and shortest definitions, I think, of sustainability comes from the Brundtland Commission, which says sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So there are various definitions of this, but it's quite difficult sometimes to try and apply that in practice. One website that I find really interesting is the One Planet Living website and their information on sustainability. So they're the ones who collate data on sustainability and on the different environmental impacts that countries have throughout the world. So some of the stats that they have come out with, and sorry, I think that's the text on that's a bit messy, but if everyone in the world was to live like an average European, we'd need 2.5 planets just to sustain ourselves. If everyone in the world was to live like a North American, and that's just been blocked out by the thing, so if maybe that was a North American who blocked that out, we would need 3.9 planets. So you can see that there's a big discrepancy between different countries in the world and how we use resources. The One Planet Living has 10 guiding principles. So zero carbon is number one, which is obviously why energy is always so high on the agenda, and particularly in Ireland. Zero waste, sustainable transport, local and sustainable materials, local and sustainable food sources, sustainable water, natural habitats and wildlife, culture and heritage, equity and fair trade, and health and happiness. So those are the 10 key indicators in the One Planet Living. There's extra information there, but we're short on time, so I won't go into it in too many details, but these are the kind of key things that they would ask us to think about in terms of sustainability. I don't know if you can see that. It's quite a large graph, but if you were to look at the ecological footprint of nations, and that's the 2010 figures, Ireland is the 14th worst country in the world for its ecological footprint. I was actually quite shocked at that. I was working previously to 2005 figures. And looking now at the UK, they're 28th, which, you know, there's quite a big difference. And the reason that Ireland is performs quite poorly is because of its reliance on carbon-intensive energy uses and also transport. So because we import and we use so much fossil fuel. There's quite an interest and 8th is the USA, so we're not actually that far away from North America in Ireland. So just looking at the issues locally, I don't know if this is SEAI publish different results all the time, so but 88% is the figures that I have for energy, importing 88% of its energy requirements. So there's a huge issue there. We have a high dependency on fossil fuels. We have issues of fuel poverty, which I think are particularly relevant in Donegal. Rural communities, transport, access to services, immigration and economic recession. So there's all sorts of issues there. I'm not going to read them all out, but you know, there are key issues in different areas, and Donegal has its own particular areas, as does the other areas in Derry, Limavady, Magherafelt, etc. So what I'm just going to talk about quickly is sustainability and environmental assessment tools. energy is becoming increasingly important. So we have BERs, which have been implemented in Ireland in order to encourage people to improve their energy performance. We have tighter building regulations. So SEI are saying now that we don't no longer need funding for new builds because the energy part of the building regs is so tight now that you do not need to be asking for funding. It's quite a difficult target to achieve, a B1. And there's different EU directives addressing energy. But there are other issues within environmental sustainability, which I know that there's members of RENNET who actually work within some of these other issues like water, materials, health and well-being, waste, pollution, etc. And that's where environmental assessment tools come in. So BREEAM is an environmental assessment method for buildings. And there's also a method for communities called BREEAM Communities and Greenprint. So what is BREEAM? BREEAM is the Building Research Establishment's environmental assessment method. It's the world's leading and most widely used environmental assessment method for buildings. The rating benchmarks helps clients and other stakeholders to compare their building's performance with other buildings and other non-domestic buildings. BREEAM is a non-domestic assessment method, but there is also domestic versions of it. There's 4 key aims. So first one is to mitigate the life cycle impacts of the building on the environment. Second is to enable buildings to be recognised according to their environmental benefits. Third one is to provide a credible environmental label for buildings. And the fourth one is to stimulate demand for sustainable buildings. So the categories assessed within BREEAM, energy is very important in BREEAM. So energy would come into that when you're giving your building a BREEAM rating. Health and well-being, there would be credits within the system which address health and well-being of building occupants. Management, water, materials, pollution, waste, transport, land use and ecology. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the content. I sometimes do presentations for, I did a presentation for Engineers Ireland last week and another one for students in UCD yesterday about the actual content of the BREEAM system. But they're all listed and if you're interested, you can have a look at them when the slides are made available. But the different things which might be of interest are particular credits in the management section for contractors. So contractors who are now bidding for work in BREEAM, where a BREEAM rating is required, would have to comply with specific environmental targets while they're on site. There's also life cycle cost and service life planning is an element of it. The health and well-being section is all about occupants in the building, so providing enough ventilation for occupants, natural daylighting, indoor air quality, and addressing VOCs and high level of pollutants in the atmosphere, which may have a detrimental effect on occupants' performance. And satisfaction. Acoustic performance, access, and different hazards would also come into that. I can't get into the detail of it just now, but the energy section would be a major section. So you can see there's 15 credits for reduction of CO2 emissions. So that's the highest credit within BREEAM. And that's for achieving an improvement on your BER. So you would get no credits for just meeting the BER, but if you make any improvements over the minimum standard for building regulations, then you would be awarded credits based on that. To get 15 credits, you'd need to have a zero carbon building, and that's the way it would be awarded. You can see the different categories here and how they're weighted. So energy is the most heavily weighted topic, but health and well-being is also very highly weighted as well. And what BREEAM is seeking to do is to try and answer some of the one planet living elements and apply it to buildings and development. Okay, BREEAM scoring. So we talk about BREEAM ratings. We have different ratings for buildings. So pass, good, very good, excellent, and outstanding. And this is the amount of credits percentage that you would need to achieve to get the different ratings. Okay. BREEAM as a requirement. So BREEAM was developed by BRE in the UK. And it's a requirement in the UK and Northern Ireland. So local authorities in the UK would specify it on any public projects. So it's a way of demonstrating value for money and responsible spending, if you like, of public money on projects. But there's also the private sector have embraced it also as well. Scottish Government have implemented it. The Scottish Funding Council, who fund all new universities and colleges in Scotland, have asked for BREEAM Excellent ratings for all their buildings. The Welsh Assembly Government would specify it for any projects that they fund. Central Government and the Northern Ireland Executive. So there was a time, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but all new schools in Northern Ireland had to have a BREEAM Very Good as a minimum. And similarly, I think all social housing in Northern Ireland for a time had to have a Code for Sustainable Homes rating as well, which was be the equivalent of BREEAM for homes. So BREEAM activity in Ireland, there's quite a bit of activity at the moment using BREEAM. So the Irish Prison Service have developed their own version of BREEAM, and it's the standard which all of their new build and major refurbishment projects will be built to. Universities, I've done projects for UCD, their new science building has a BREEAM Excellent rating. The University of Limerick have a BREEAM Excellent rating for one of their new buildings, and DIT Grange Gorman are going to ask for BREEAM ratings on all the new buildings on that site. So if anyone's tendering for any of that work, you quite often have to demonstrate your understanding of BREEAM in order to meet the tender requirements. Commercial office buildings would also ask for it, and the HSE are now asking for it on all new HSE funded projects. So there's about 5 projects at the moment from the HSE who have asked for BREEAM Excellent, or BREEAM Very Good I think as a minimum, and Excellent as an aspiration. The council offices, there's various council offices who have BREEAM ratings. Industrial and multinationals would also ask for it. I've recently worked on a project with Diageo where they achieved a BREEAM Outstanding rating for a new brew house in St James's Gate, adjacent to the storehouse in Dublin. They also achieved a LEED Platinum, which is the American version of BREEAM. There's quite a lot of activity. If you're interested in knowing where the BREEAM buildings are in Ireland, the website at the bottom, Green Book Live, would tell you where all these buildings are. So BREEAM in Ireland, there's 18 licensed assessor companies. So I'd be a licensed assessor, but there's also other licensed assessors out there. There's also BREEAM accredited professionals, so you can train if you're an architect or engineer, or you have experience, or you're a contractor, and you have experience in green buildings or want to get experience, you can apply for the BREEAM AP accredited professional qualification. There's 12 certified BREEAM projects at the moment, but there's quite a lot in the process at the moment. First outstanding BREEAM building was Diageo Project Brewhouse. Project Phoenix, sorry, the new brewhouse. You can see all that from. So there's just some information on the Diageo project. I'm actually going to an awards ceremony on Tuesday, and Diageo are up for BREEAM Building of the Year for industrial buildings. So we're going to that with them on Tuesday in London, and their final score was 90.96%, which is a huge achievement in terms of environmental and BREEAM ratings. They had said EPC, but a BER of a zero carbon building, which I think is a first in Ireland. And they got 16 credits in the Energy 1 section because of that. The Diageo site's they already had CHP on site, so they were able to incorporate that in the new building, so that was a big benefit to them. It's supposed to be the most efficient brewery in the world, and it also has a LEED Platinum rating. And just a couple of slides quickly on BREEAM communities. As well as doing sustainability criteria for buildings, BREEAM can also be applied to communities and master plans. I worked with Limerick Regeneration Agency when BRE were based in Limerick, putting together sustainability objectives for the new regeneration areas, and that's still being taken on by the council at the moment down there. So it's a way of setting sustainability objectives and tying them in with planning policy requirements. And you can then put together the BREEAM Communities and Green Print Standard. So there's different categories, again, within that. So it's looking at energy, but it's also looking at other environmental impacts, which you can then set targets for within your particular area. We actually were speaking to Letterkenny LYIT, about doing this for some of their new development areas as well. Okay, and it just enables sustainable communities, so it can reflect the local variations and requirements. You can tailor it to local areas. It provides platforms for achieving BREEAM certification. It enables developers to address and planners to implement planning policies and regulations with ease. So, and that's what the green print rating would look like. I'm just going to finish there because I know we're kind of short on time, but what I would like to say is just in terms of for RenNet members and maybe for everybody here is that obviously energy is very important, but there are a lot of opportunities in other areas, particularly waste and water. Materials is another huge area which we haven't even started to address yet in terms of, in the construction industry. So that's really the main aim of the presentation. But if you want any more information, that's my email address, and I can get in touch with you.